What's your soul purpose? It's what you came here to accomplish. It's also who you're meant to become so that you can make an impact by being yourself. We're all here to unlock our potential and create positive change in the world. Everything starts with you. One is not born into their purpose, one steps into their purpose. Were you born to do it? Welcome to Born to Do It, a podcast about the positive change makers around us. And today we're going to be talking about a brand new, exciting title, the Chief Embodiment Officer, something that we might be noticing in the next few years and decades. These titles that bring holistic meaning into the workplaces and redefine what it means to co create, not just produce for the sake of boosting the economy, but rather producing so that we can channel more of our souls. And my guest today, Erica Horowitz, is going to tell us how one can embody the Chief Embodiment Officer and what it actually means. Welcome, Erica.
Thank you, Stella. It's an honor to be here, to be in this space, born to do it. I'm truly, truly so inspired that you invited me to be here today.
It's my pleasure to have you. Do you feel like you were born to be a somatic teacher and facilitator?
I don't know if I was born to be in that. I feel like I'm a multidimensional, multifaceted being, but I was born to be having this piece of the puzzle imparted and encoded in who I am. So in the long and short story, yes.
What was the dream when you were 5 years old? I'm guessing nobody that's 5 years old dreams about being a shaman or a healer or, some of these more multidimensional titles as you mentioned. But maybe when we increase the awareness of what they mean, we might have 5-year-olds that think, I might be that one day.
Mm, yeah. I mean, at 5 years old, I wanted to just be happy. I loved animals. I always wanted to be an animal trainer, something where I wanted to work with dolphins and dogs. And in my corporate career, I think it's funny, I always would say I became a human trainer. So there was something about creating spaces and places for people to learn, to grow, to really help themselves evolve in the way that's supporting their own well being and the well being of the places and spaces that they're in.
So as you're holding space for this healing to happen, what would you say is the healing that needs to happen today? What is the healing that most humans need to experience? Because we keep talking about it a little bit like a keyword, a little bit like we need to be positive, we need to do the inner work, we need to do the healing. But what actually is that healing for anyone that's, having their normal life thinking to themselves, I have no healing to do, and then one day they realize, oh, this is why I attracted that partner. This is why I've been struggling with my money. This is why I've been struggling with friendships because I had that healing to do.
Yeah, we all are here, and surprise to anyone listening, no one's ever healed. There's never a big 10-piece band that says, congratulations, you're healed, you're done with your work. We are always in a process of growth and involvement. So, first and foremost, seeing that and knowing that that's part of your journey is something where I always give kudos to you and starting wherever you are to meet you where you are. In today's world, we are living in a space where disconnection is rewarded. Productivity is really powerful. That is like the number one goal, is how productive can I be? Resting is seen as something that is less than. And so we're taught to really focus on logic over intuition, over your needs, over really understanding self. Trauma, burnout, constantly connected online is ironic because it's actually disconnecting us from ourselves. So, really, in a lot of ways, I would say what healing is really being here to be called forth right now in this time period is to allow ourselves to get to know ourselves in a way that supports ourselves and really being a self-guided leader, to embody knowing who we are, how we grow, what are some of the areas that are supportive to us as we can help shape the world in a more positive way.
Well said. Well said. And you mentioned something really crucial for this conversation is that being disconnected is rewarded. The more
Yes.
you remain in a state of dissociation, the more you're going to be useful to this system because this system was designed that way. It's not random that we're all feeling the effects of that system, that we're feeling stressed, numb, burnout. The system was designed to get us to this place. I don't think we were actually meant to become aware of it, become conscious of it, and realize, oh, there is something fundamentally wrong with the system, with society, with the industries as they are. And we have a role to play, the positive change makers. And I believe when we do that healing work, we start to believe in our ability to actually bring that positive change. And so, how do we get back? How do we get back to who we are? And how do we connect back to our own essence, so inner child? And I remember when I proposed the idea for this episode to you, one of the things that came to my mind is that we're disconnected from our own body and essence at different ages in different ways. So the position that you represent, Chief Embodiment Officers, has so many implications in society, and it might have different titles as well. But how would you guide people to connect back to their own body as the first place, the starting point?
Yeah, absolutely. And I love on the screen, you have all different seasons of life, starting from kids to seniors to leaders to teens. And so, one thing that find is so important in this work is to really meet you where you are. I'm not trying to create a space where you're feeling uncomfortable in the meeting you exactly where you are, but really creating curiosity, creating a space where you can pause from the autopilot of where you're living in today, to take a deep breath and notice within yourself what signals are coming up within your body. Do you feel tension? Do you feel ease? Do you feel a sense of comfort or pain? Getting to know those signals is the starting point. Really, our body and the language of learning our bodies, emotional body, physical body, energetic body, all of this is the way that we can start really gaining the being online for ourselves. Because in our culture, we're so focused on being online in so many other capacities. And I don't think we're ever going to get rid of that. I don't think that's ever going away. But learning how to have autonomy and agency of the way we take care of ourselves to show up into society. I personally don't believe we're going to have, capitalism go away. And, that's just an unrealistic expectation. But how can we bring people to create more community and space between all of the noise? That's really what I think I'm here to do and support people in.
And this is the irony, I suppose. We're not supposed to be online as much because that
Mhm.
keeps us so disconnected. And yet, what's not online is our own consciousness. Our consciousness has been disabled, or it's offline, or it's just distracted by all this noise. And so I love that the way that you're bringing people's attention back to themselves is through the physical level, through the body, because this is probably one of the easiest way to get people to be present once more. If you start talking to people about their souls, the conversation might get a little bit more complex and a little bit more difficult for them to grasp. And we all want something that we can see, that we can feel right away. Whereas when we start with the body, we can right away understand, yeah, I'm touching my body. I know that there's something, I can feel the sensation. It must be real.
Yeah, I
Which
want
one
to
of these
also.
groups? Oops, sorry.
Oh, I just want to add what you said, I think is really important. When we go to that super woo woo spiritual, like, with you and I, Stella, we could go there. We could talk about these deep soul
Mhm.
level, conscious, unconscious contracts. But for the average person, they might think that that is so beyond their scope of where they are today. But every single person can be in touch with some sensation of their body, some sensation of their physical self. So, really, that's always the starting point for me in my approach of really being practical and tactical and meeting you in the physical body presence where you are. And I think that's just a really important thing to name in working with someone, really understanding if they're meeting you where you are, or if they want to go, to that 5D dimension. That's cool too. But just also knowing what you're getting into as far as like expectations.
Absolutely. Yeah. And some people are a little bit more connected to their own consciousness and so it might be a little bit easier for them to actually start having that conversation from that lens versus let's talk about our body, or even the types of exercises and classes they might be more interested in would be those woo-woo classes because they allow them to explore more of that which they cannot explore with normal people. But I'm curious, as you're looking at these titles or groups of people on the screen, kids, adults, teens, seniors, leaders, teachers, as you mentioned, these are kind of the seasons that we go through in life. Which one of these groups are more challenging to work with because of the resistance that happens or because of the ego in them that prevents them from that connection? And maybe even more importantly, which one of these groups is essential that we start working with right away in order for this positive impact to happen in society?
Yeah, I'm going to start with who we should work with right away. I think teens, kids, really, and I would even say leaders, people that are in a space where there's malleable impact. So kids still have so much of life ahead of them to take the time and space to, if only in school we were able to learn how to regulate our emotions. This would be suicide prevention, honestly. It would be such an impactful way to really help people learn to understand themselves with cyberbullying and all these really horrific ways that kids are treating each other. It's because they don't have the tools to understand themselves and to understand each other. And same with teens. Teens are given so much responsibility. There's so much outside noise of performing, expectations, meeting that next rung, that next success level. And so they don't always have the space to get to know who they are, to let their freak flag fly, if you will, of showing up and being themselves. And so giving them space and grace to grow into themselves, to make mistakes, to get messy, but to honor their own path, I think will really create and shape the next wave of future, the next generation. And it's not too late. So we really have time and space to work with these folks and really see them so that they can take those steps and make a change with their generation. And then I would say for the leaders end, right? They're the ones who can really create a ripple effect to the people that see them, that support them. So really creating spaces for leaders to get more in touch with themselves, with their own levels of honesty, with radical honesty with self, learning and understanding, where am I operating from? Am I operating from a place of scarcity or anxiety or fear? And what can I do to honor those experiences of those emotions so that I can show up more fully and authentically in the people that I'm here to guide, serve, and support? So that would be, I would say, the group that really needs this first. And the most challenging, I love my seniors. I love them so much. They hold such a special place in my heart. But they've lived long lives, and they've lived long lives in the way that they've lived them. So if we think about this from a scientific level, their neural pathways are, those grooves are pretty thick in where they are. So they are in, I would say, more of a challenging, it's not completely lost, but really just creating space for openness, for curiosity to see something different. Depending on who you're working with, that can be a challenge, but it also can be so beautiful to see. I've worked with, like, for example, a 72-year-old, and this man is so beautiful and amazing and curious in the ways that he can show up more open, to create more space for love and kindness in his life, even when he's been through some really challenging hardships.
I'm feeling a lot of hope as I'm listening to you because I'm realizing that it doesn't matter which group you start with, so long as you start, so long as
Mm,
people that are interested in this work, they just show up and invite people on this journey or offer their type of work and then start educating people around why this is important. I think each of these groups have something to offer to society. And if we can meet them where they are and offer them the healing that they need, because especially teens, they're angry because they're
yeah.
realizing if the system doesn't change, which the system won't change on its own, which means that they need to change it because their parents are probably not in the mood to change it anymore. They don't have the strength, they don't have the resilience anymore. They're tired as well. Their parents are angry. If their
Mm,
leaders don't change the system, likewise, they're seeing the leaders are also angry. The leaders are also exhausted. Now it's their responsibility, and they haven't even started living as adults. They're just, crossing the bridge from children to adults, and they're realizing there's so much work that is waiting for me. Is this why I've been raised to be offered almost as a sacrifice to this system? No, I'm going to do something with my resilience, with my energy, with my ideas and innovation. So I think you're right. The teens need our encouragement and support so that they can break those cycles, so that they can bring their authentic blueprint to society, because so many of the blueprints of previous generations have been lost due to
Mm.
the pressure, due to that external pressure. Which brings me to my next question. What are the long term consequences of being emotionally numb? Because I believe this is what happens when we are so disconnected from ourselves. We feel a lot of pain when we're not connected to our body, to our mind, our thoughts, when we're ignoring our thoughts, when we're running away from our thoughts or abandoning our ideas. Then our heart starts to feel the pain and we don't want to deal with the pain because it's overwhelming. Maybe when we were younger, nobody had the capacity to teach us, to hold space for us. And so we learned it's not safe for me to feel my emotions. And that created even a bigger distance between ourselves and our soul, our higher self, which is keeping us emotionally numb. And we have a lot of adults, also teens, also children, different ages, really, that are suffering from so many conditions. Some of them are on the screen: depression, grief, disease, apathy, boredom, stress, burnout, self-hatred, and the anger. I'm feeling the anger in the air as
Mm.
as I'm talking about this. I think even though people are emotionally numb, they're angry because they understand there was another way for them to grow up. And that way wasn't possible because the system is so corrupted, because the system is so broken.
I want to name, Stella, that, like, yes, the system overarchingly, there is a lot of brokenness. But I firmly believe that it's each individual person's self reliance, self responsibility to not take outside victimhood and to really honor and create space for self to show up, to create that I'm looking for growth. There's so many tools now, there's so many areas, avenues. Like, for example, people use ChatGPT to talk through their feelings, to start engaging with AI if they can't afford therapists. There's lots of free somatic videos online to engage and be in the body, yoga, dancing, breath work, right? So there are a lot of these spaces that people can start taking that responsibility for themselves to say, I don't want to stay in this mindset. I'm really taking authority in the way I choose to live. But to really answer this question, you have it on the screen. It creates dis-ease, discomfort. There's so much levels of separating our healing possibility when we move in that perpetual numb state. So we're moving into this avoidance, this numbing. And eventually we just lose in touch with our truth and the agency of our own body and our own signals. So the unprocessed emotions, they never go away, but scientifically they stay in our myofascia. If you've heard the expression, the issues in the tissues, or the body keeps the score. So over time, overarchingly, we get this stuff stuck physically, the stagnation in our bodies. So it gets harder and more challenging if we're not processing the emotion. And the best way to do this is doing this in real time, to honor what emotion is coming through, to not push it away, to say, okay, right now I'm feeling some sadness. Let me just sit with that sadness for a bit. Let me become friends with it. Okay, I felt that. I feel good that I've allowed that to feel through. Maybe I cried. Maybe I stomped my feet. And then it passes, just like every emotion passes. And the more regularly we let our emotions come up to the surface, the faster that they move through us. So we're not sitting in that for days, weeks, months on end.
What happens when we embrace emotions that we've been suppressing for years?
People are so scared to do it. People have so much fear.
Mhm.
What would it mean if I could feel my anxiety? If I actually said, you know what, I'm going to, like, hold this anxiety and let it be present. It creates this sigh of relief, this exhale when we give ourselves the window of tolerance. Like, maybe it's really scary to feel that emotion. So maybe I'm just going to feel it for like 30 seconds. Okay, just that 30 seconds, and then I'm going to let it go away. A great starting point. This is something where you can take and test this material over time. So if that's something that feels really scary and far away to you, practicing in micro doses of feeling your full feelings, and eventually that window will get bigger and bigger.
Is it possible for a person to collapse once they open up and start to process those repressed emotions, suppressed emotions. Because I've personally experienced these windows where I get worse before I get better because I finally allow my nervous system to rest because my body's finally taking the time to just rest. And I lose energy because all the energy is going towards processing these emotions.
Yeah, it's definitely possible. It's possible to, if you are a 60-year-old person and you haven't felt your emotions in 50 years, so since you were 10 years old, and all of a sudden you've decided to do some of this work and open yourself up, it might feel really overwhelming. It might feel like a lot. And that's a part of why community is so important in creating spaces for healing. We are not meant to heal in silos and alone. Community is the place if you have someone that you can talk to or even just sit with and breathe with, to co-regulate with, to really allow your heart rate and your breath rate to be matched with someone. You don't always need the words, but someone's loving presence really can make an impact when you get into like that, oh my gosh, it's so much, I don't know what to do with that.
Mm. You mentioned something that made an impact on me, which was the growth. When we block our emotions, when we remain emotionally numb, we block our own growth. And so,
Mhm.
with that lack of growth, we also block our clarity for the future. So, we start to lose our purpose, or start to lose our clarity towards our purpose and how we can be of service. So, it's not as simple. And this is not in any way simple. All of these words here, they're not simple at all, but it's not as simple as just having an emotional reaction to being emotionally numb. There are also physical conditions that your body might develop because you are suppressing something that should be naturally flowing. So you're suppressing the motion of the emotion. That's essentially what's happening. And
Mhm.
so, especially with autoimmune diseases, there's so much research that is coming to the surface now. Scientists are proving this. They're actively recruiting people in study groups to make sure that this gets more visibility, that us ignoring our emotions and ignoring our growth, overall growth, is creating disease,
Mhm.
chronic conditions that can be prevented. And one of the things that also I haven't included here is that by blocking our anger or sadness, by ignoring those heavy, uncomfortable emotions, we also block the joy, and we also block our ability to connect with people, which creates further distance from every single person. And that kind of flows into my next question for you, Erica, which is, how is this everyday dissociation impacting society as a whole? Because everything that you see on the news, everything that all the awful things that are happening, they're not random. They are a consequence of all of this dissociation, numbing, maybe emotional immaturity that we've sustained, maybe unconsciously, maybe consciously. I would say unconsciously. I don't think when our when an emotionally immature parent raises their child, they're consciously thinking, "Oh, I'm going to raise them like that because nobody raised me like that." I think they're just trying to continue ignoring the pain. And so this is the best that they can do, essentially. But this is creating so many negative consequences in society that we can fix, I suppose.
Yeah, I mean, you, I think, hit the nail on the head in so many ways. Like this disassociation is leaving people disconnected. And when we're disconnected, we feel isolated. And when we feel isolated, we remove ourselves physically, emotionally, mentally. So there's really no room for us to feel like we can be a part of something. And when we struggle to attune to others, this leads to defensiveness. This leads to a lack of collaboration. If we want to, if there still is this capitalistic world that we still need to be a part of to be in society, we need collaboration. We need connection. We need partnership. We need to be able to fight. And when I say we need to be able to fight, it means need to be able to speak our truth, to say what we feel, and to listen to each other. I think that's a huge part of this everyday disassociation. How many times do you talk to someone, and it might be a really good friend of yours, where all of a second they listen to you, but the only thing they're responding back with is something about them, something that is completely outside of the world that you're speaking with. So many people don't know how to listen because they're so hyper fixated on their own experience or lack of emotional regularity that they can create space. People are living in the survival mode, so there's no room for them to listen to the other. And that's what creates that friction and that distance.
It's a paradox. It's a little bit of a paradox because
Yeah.
you want to show up for people around you, but if you are at max capacity because you're trying to show up for yourself because nobody's holding space for you, at some point you're still going to collapse and you're still going to
Mm,
realize I need to show up for myself because nobody's showing up for myself. And I've done this. I've shown up for so many other people and then I realized who's actually showing up for me? Like who
mm,
is actually able to hold space for me? Because after a while people get used to you holding space for them and they get entitled to you holding space for them. So I quickly realized, and I'm kind of flowing into the final step of kind of like the worst case scenario here and all the negativity around this conversation, because there is painful aspects of this that we need to talk about in order
mhm,
for us to acknowledge the elephant in the room. The elephants, it's plural elephants by now. But we have been programmed to abandon ourselves. And the moment when we realize I need to heal for me, but I also want to heal so that I can show up better for my partner, for my friends, for my family. There is a lot of resistance that happens. People
mhm.
look at you as you're the odd one out. People look at you as you're the selfish one for embarking on this journey. And from the outside in, it looks like you're abandoning everyone because you're so selfish. But actually, it's your return back to self because you're done abandoning yourself. From your experience, why do you think we are so programmed to abandon ourselves? And really, what's the antidote so that we can encourage and help those around us to also return back home?
Yeah, I mean, from my own personal experience, I was a people pleaser, a reformed performer, reformed perfectionist, all these things that I thought externally would bring me the validation that I was seeking. So we're shape shifting by survival mode, whether it's people pleasing, whether it's whatever you're doing, fight, flight, fawn, anything in these survival states is disconnecting, which we think is helping us become safe. But in reality, it's just removing us further and further away from self. So going back to what you said, it's this paradox. So really what like I believe so much of the work that I'm bringing into the somatic space or really being in the body space is a remembering. It's a remembering who you are. It's a reclamation of self. It's saying that I'm going to honor all the parts of me, whether you want to label something as good, bad, ugly, right, wrong, it doesn't matter. I am accepting and appreciating all parts of myself, really seeing myself as a whole person so that when I show up in that way, I create a light and a space and permission for other people to do the same.
So, for anyone that's been on both ends of the journey, they've been super out there for people when they realized nobody was there for them, and they've back to, they've increased their boundaries, they've returned back home, they're living from a more embodied state of mind and heart. Some of them might experience trust issues
Mm,
and they might
mhm.
be hyper vigilant. This is another manifestation of the survival mode because we're healing at different levels. What would be your advice to people that are still from that mindset thinking, "Oh, but people are still going to hurt me or people are still going to do that." And the narratives are many.
Yeah, of course. The mind is a wild place. It can tell us
Mhm.
all kinds of stories about all kinds of things. So first and foremost, just naming that your mind can take you into faraway lands and things that may not be whole truths. So really what I would say is let's take this somatically. What does a yes feel like in your body? Where do you know within the sensations of your body? Is it a yes? Is it a relaxation of your jaw or your shoulders? And the same for a no. Is your tummy tight and tense? Do you crunch over? Like really learning and understanding the signals in your body to give you that guidance around what feels safe, who feels like they're trusting, who feels like maybe they're not the right person. And maybe also, it's not that right time. Someone else might be who you used to feel as like a reliable connection, might be going through their own experience and they might not have space. So, really asking and honoring moment to moment. I like to say it's really living in the gray is when we're in this healing process, is knowing that, someone that might have been that person for you for so long, as you said, they might be evolving at a different rate and you might not really feel like they're the right person to be sharing with that feels seen, supported by you. And then maybe in a year from now, that might really realign. So giving yourself room and space to know that nothing is fixed, everything is in flow. That's really so much about what this is about, too.
There's also the scarcity mindset as well. I'm hearing, like, as you're talking, I'm hearing the Dua Lipa song "Scared to Be Lonely." A lot of
Ah,
people, they stay in connections because they're scared to be lonely. They're scared, "Oh, I'm gonna be left alone." And I don't know if this is something that we've been told to fear from fairy tales or from stories, from our family, from teachers. There's this fear that being alone is super scary and you should avoid being alone. Maybe it comes from our ancestors who needed the social group
mm,
to survive. Maybe
yeah.
it's, our DNA, our genes. But there's another fear I feel now that we're healing, and it's the fear of feeling pain, as if feeling the pain is going to destroy us. So we're stuck between a rock and a hard place. We don't want to be alone, but also we don't want to risk feeling the pain. I would love to maybe highlight here that we're all vessels of love and there is no amount of pain that can destroy us.
Yes. That's so
But it
important to name. That's so important to name. And I think just like piggybacking off of what you're saying is it's not scary when you really can take the time. It takes courage. I think that's what you're also trying to
Mhm.
say. This is a act of courage. This is not for someone that's like, oh, this is so easy. This is so simple. Like, this is just like whatever it is that's super basic, clicking yet like on someone's Instagram. This takes an active approach to showing up, to saying that I want to grow and evolve and I'm ready to be open to whatever that pain feels like, in knowing that it's not going to be permanently that way, trusting in myself and my process that I can move through that pain or move through that heartache or whatever that is that's showing up.
courage, absolutely courage and wisdom. And I
Hmm.
think this is where a lot of people haven't reached that state of the wisdom because the wisdom to realize that you're that vessel of love is very Buddhist. Monks reach that wisdom, especially when they've been in periods of isolation. But I always like to think about monks as sometimes they're being of service to humanity, but how much are they actually in service if you cannot count on a monk? Because the monk is super isolated. The monk is not your neighbor. You cannot knock on your neighbor when you're feeling pain because the monk is somewhere out there meditating or they're committed to that practice of meditating for hours to become that master. So there is a courage that you're talking about that the everyday person who is courageous to be friends with as many people as possible to be of service, there is a courage that they've mastered that they can teach other people. There's also that wisdom that we can be these vessels of love that can alchemize the pain. And maybe we need some lessons around how to go through the uncomfortable emotions like pain and understand that this is temporary without
Yeah.
actually trying to avoid the pain, understanding that this is part of the human experience.
Yeah, and I think like what you're also saying is like going back and looking at your life's experiences to see like, okay, today, right here, right now, if I go back and I reflect, I can see in my history the challenging things that I've overcome. Like, what can you look at your life and see from your own self reflection of the validation that I'm here now, that I was able to go through whatever those experiences of pain and challenge were to show up and still be here
Mhm.
today. And I also want to hit on the point when you talked about the monks. I think we can live our lives inspired by what those monks are creating, in the sense of we don't need to go sit in a cave and be isolated for 6 years and come back post retreat. We can create those mini moments. I'm a firm believer in this really powerful ancient medicine of really what you're talking about in these Buddhist teachings. How do we modernize it and we bring it to you right here right now in 2025 and beyond? And so that's really meeting the people where they are in these micro, small, somatic experiences that over time you'll gain more confidence, more trust, more awareness of yourself. So your window of learning and understanding gets faster, shorter, and more resilient in real time.
Absolutely. And it's not about the escapism as well. It's not about going
Mm.
and meeting your spirit team and spending hours in that meditation, but rather inviting more of your higher self to be grounded in your own body vessel so that you can use the ideas that your higher self brings, which is where I think this is going to have the most implications in the workplace. And that takes me to the chief embodiment officer position and bringing that to the workplaces. If people used their inspiration from monks and they meditated every single day, doesn't have to be 6 hours, even 6 minutes, consciously meditating before an important meeting, before, you know, going into their working day, even after work, to purify their mind before going back to their family, or taking a lunch break to meditate in between, big projects. The impact that that's going to have for the productivity, but also for the connection with their team members is going to be massive. How do you visualize the chief embodiment officer supporting workplaces?
Yeah, so it's funny because for a long time, if you would have asked me back when I was in corporate America, like if you could have a dream title, what would it be? And at first I said Chief Happiness Officer, happiness. And while happiness is also such an important part, it's not the full spectrum of the emotions of embodiment. So, as I've really done this work, this is a movement. Embodiment is literally moving the energy and the emotional experiences. So, how this is really brought into the workplace, in my opinion, is creating more space for presence, more space for emotional honesty, and giving tools and practical ways to regulate and honor the emotional experience of what it takes to be in a team dynamic, what it takes to work with people who have opposing views from you, to work through conflict in a way that's productive, to eliminate resentment in the workplace, to create space where we can make decisions from a more embodied, aware place. And I think from a leadership perspective, this really creates a ripple effect in the way that all levels of people at an organization can be seen modeling this behavior that we want all people to show up as their fullest, best versions of themselves. And really, what that truly means is honoring the full life experience of every person. Someone at your job may have lost a pet, or, someone's kid might not be feeling well. So they might not be showing up energetically the way you always see them. So, someone like a chief embodiment officer can be the one to help hold space to create an opening for people to be honest about where they are so that there is more of those real conversations. So people can have tools and understanding on how to work better with each other in a way that creates the goals of the capitalistic perspective, productivity, wealth, all these really great things, more technology. But it starts from the human lens. At the core, this work is about bringing the humanity back into the workplace.
I love this. Bringing humanity back to the workplace. Most people try to run away from their body because they're not happy with their body. Because once
Mm.
again, they're programmed 24/7 to look at the models, to look at the filtered pictures, the photoshopped images. AI images are now introducing us to brand new beauty standards for all genders. How do you propose we start to move towards helping people love their bodies so that that isn't distracting them anymore? Because I think this is what's distracting us from truly seeing our colleagues as human beings. We see the clothes they're wearing, the body, and I think we instantly think to ourselves, I need to go to the gym after this. Oh, I need to eat healthier lunch. There's always that, I need to do something more, I need to do something more, I need to be better, but for all the wrong things. That
Mm.
growth is very superficial because we've been taught to believe that our value is connected to how we look, not how we feel, how we look. And as we're reframing the conversation towards how we feel, we also need to connect our feelings to better values, values that connect us to the essence that allows us to celebrate ourselves just as we are.
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, for someone, it's pretty extreme to go from hating your body to loving. That's like totally an unrealistic expectation. So, how do we move into more neutrality? How do we move into a place that goes from like, okay, maybe I don't hate this part of my body, but I just see that it's here. I don't love it. I don't hate it. I'm just like getting awareness of it. And, from that awareness, okay, well, what can be something that I do like? What's one thing that I can name that I feel good about? So, starting really incrementally small to build that level over time. And then you'd be surprised. You're like, oh my gosh, I love all these things about myself. And that's something that takes time. I think something that's really important is we are living in such an instant gratification world. Delayed gratification is the root of somatics. This is something where over time you are going to learn to take stock in who you are and how you're feeling, and it is always going to be changing. Nobody can feel your body besides you. Nobody can know what the sensations and awareness are. And what you were speaking about before is this comparison. We are living in a world that promotes constant comparison to the other.
Mhm.
So when we can really take space and not taking the comparison outside of ourselves, but really comparing ourselves to where we are and where we were. Maybe last week I was feeling something, so I can reflect back. Well, what was I eating last week that made me maybe feel these things? Or what was I moving in a way that made me feel really good about something? Or maybe I pulled my muscle doing something else, right? So that's where we can maybe reshift that comparison to instead of outside, but maybe just helping ourselves see the evolution of our process through ourselves, not outside of ourselves.
I'm visualizing one day, maybe 90% of people, maybe not all of them just yet, even 50% of people, they've embodied their soul, they've embodied their higher self, their essence. They're not waking up and thinking, how do I look today? I need to hide this pimple or I need to this hair. They're just living. They're just embodying their essence. They're not thinking about how to present themselves. They're just showing up and being themselves. Do you see that happening in real time in the near future where people go anywhere in the workplace, meeting new people, networking, and they see each other for their souls? They're able to transcend the body. They're not focusing on the details because the details they almost don't matter because we're not interacting with other people's bodies. We're interacting with their soul, with their inner
Mhm.
spark, that spark that brings them closer to the divinity. And we're so reduced to just this meat suit that we cannot see each other for our hearts, our ideas, our brilliant ideas. I do see it. I see it maybe way into the future, but how do you see that transition happening? Is it achievable? Is it possible? Or is it naive and foolish, reserved to the dreamers?
No, I am a firm believer in like, I'm a glass half full girly. Like I always will see things from a hopeful place. So I think the way that we can move towards that is simply presence. If we can be present with someone else, if we can really allow ourselves, like I said earlier, to actually listen, like not why am I talking just at someone, but really just listening to them and allowing themselves to share and having a real dialogue back and forth. I think that's a possibility to create that space. Something else that kind of came through for me as you were sharing is when you are so tapped into the soul, when you feel so connected to yourself, that's where your creativity, your imagination, all of these elements of wanting to show up as this, your outside and your inside are all connected as one. So maybe you feel more powerful in a beautiful kimono or a gorgeous necklace or whatever it is. And that's also sparking conversation that's connected back to your soul. So your creative expression can also be through your body in a way that brings people into the conversation too.
I believe our style showcases that authenticity, and so the people that
Yes.
truly know themselves, especially the embodied knowing, where you're truly communicating what your soul or your inner child wants to communicate. It's not about, oh, where did you buy that? Give me the brand,
Yes.
but what does that mean? Like, I see that you wear this color. What's the significance of wearing that color? So everything that we do, even when we're not talking, it starts that conversation. So beautiful point, and I'd love to make a little comeback to something that you mentioned, the chief happiness officer.
Mm.
My journey started with that, the mission for happiness. This was the very beginning of my exploration around even leadership, writing. These were the stories that I wanted to bring to people, how to be happy. And then I quickly realized the exploration of happiness starts with the exploration of sadness and what
Hmm.
prevents us from that happiness. So it's very one dimensional when we try to bring everyone to be happy. I understand the benefits of positive thinking, the law of positivity, but the law of attraction, in other words. But each emotion has a role to play. And so we shouldn't whitewash this experience. We should keep it as the rainbow that it is. And so even the grief has a role to play, anger has a role to play. So I love that you've made that transition from chief happiness officer to chief embodiment officer, because each emotion has a role to play. And I believe maybe even in the workplace, when we sense these emotions, we're going to be able to make decisions better, especially when there is a new proposal and you check in with your body. How does that feel? Does this idea feel good? If it doesn't feel good, your body's trying to communicate with you that your intuition. And I think sometimes leaders reject that intuition because they think on paper it looks good. And that's why, you know, the disconnectedness continues, even in relationships and partnerships.
Definitely.
So we've talked a little bit about the workplace and maybe scratched the surface on society. But how can a chief embodiment officer support all of society? And these are some of the workplaces, specific workplaces that came to mind outside of business
Mhm.
worlds, schools, nurseries, governments, rehab centers, retirement homes, TV channels, having channels dedicated to people teaching you how to feel your emotions, how to do
Mm.
meditations. Imagine if you could switch the breaking news with something else, switch the channel, and suddenly you're guided how to process these breaking news. You're not just being showered with the negativity. And also hospitals, if we can help patients that are on their healing journey physically to embody more of their higher self, more of their soul that already comes with these healing modalities, and even befriend your inner child while you're laying in hospital waiting to be returned back home. There's so many implications, positive implications, when we talk about the embodiment.
Yeah, I mean, if we really think about it at its core, disconnection doesn't discriminate. It doesn't matter if you're working, as a chief resident in a hospital, or you're someone that's creating meals or cleaning, and doing anything at any level. So really, I think embodiment in creating spaces, it really allows for there to be this energetic someone that's leading community care. And I want to say that this isn't taking away from social workers or psychologists and therapists. This is actually giving them more support and more resonance to know that there's somebody that cares about them and the role that they're playing in the community that they're building and where they work. This is not about fixing people. No one's broken. It's really about creating space for people to get back in touch with themselves and who they are. So when we're seeing people that are working with highly acute patients in rehab centers, or people that are really unwell in retirement homes, or schools with children that are having a lot of learning and development issues. There's a taxing of being in service to some of these people in these places. And someone like a chief embodiment officer can let them know that I see you. I see you. I see the work that you're doing. And I acknowledge and I thank you for this presence. I thank you for your dedication and your support. And just simply by having someone see you and honor your experience, it creates a safety to return back to self, to feel like, wow, I'm so glad someone gets me. I'm so glad that someone supports me. It's really taking like that appreciation that, it's not just that pizza party or whatever that thing is that they want to give you, that, snuggie from your workplace. This is taking all of those appreciations and bringing it back to the way that you show up as a human. It's really creating a way that society and workplaces say, I see you, I care about you, and I want your well-being to be at the forefront when you show up here.
Before our episode, I was reading a couple of articles around symptoms that you're emotionally numb, especially as I was preparing the slides. And one of the symptoms was that you feel like nobody sees you, nobody knows who you are. But the
Yes.
more I think about it, if you're surrounded by people that are blocking their own emotions, that are not interested in feeling their emotions, they're not going to be able to see you. So you're going to be validated in knowing that you're right. Nobody can see you, nobody can feel you because they're not capable of. It's not because you're not worthy of being seen or understood. It's because people are incapable of doing so in the current environment that you're in. And
Hmm.
so bringing people in different environments that are capable of doing that, I think we're going to start to see these lights popping up in society. But it's a powerful statement. I see you, especially when it comes to I see your soul. I see
Mm.
what's inside of you. That spark in your eyes when you talk about certain ideas. I see that. I see this is what excites you to be alive. So would you say this is a spiritual role, the chief embodiment officer? I feel like we've covered a lot of spirituality in it, but I don't want to limit people to thinking it's just a spiritual calling. But also, I love the idea if it's a spiritual role that we're bringing more spirituality into the workplace and into society in a way that is practical.
Yeah. So, like, when I think of the word spiritual, simply to me at its core means knowing myself, knowing thyself. So, when you think about that in the workplace, yeah, I think there is a spirituality element, but I don't want it to feel so far away from people that it's like, oh gosh, it's this woo woo thing that it's
Mhm.
not going to be something that we need here. But it's simply about, at its core, getting you to know yourself well enough that you can show up in a way that creates more openness in the people that you're working with. So, yeah, it's definitely spiritual, but it's not in a place that it's not going to meet you exactly where your workplace is, where your organization lies, what the challenges are that you're seeing, what the successes look like. What I think is really cool about this role is it's kind of like a chameleon, right? Like it's sort
Mhm.
of goes in this way. And I think for me specifically, like one of the things I really appreciate about myself is taking the space to let the room and the people show me who they are so I can be of service in the way that meets them where they are, versus I just show up as me and I'm going to kind of walk through. No, that has not worked for me. I have tried that before. But I love being able to really see people and create and be curious. So I want it to be a dialogue that really allows for there to be this weaving. It's really a weaving of the involvement. And then eventually you have this beautiful quilt of all of these different parts of the connections, the humanity, the experience. So people really can see what embodiment looks like through all of those interactions with each other and themselves.
It's about the self awareness and knowing oneself. I love that. And the role of the chief embodiment officer is not to keep things surface level, but to bring everyone's individuality to the surface so that we
Yes.
actually can have a proper conversation that it's me and you. It's not what I expect of you or what you expect of me. So therefore you're curating a version to meet me based on so many masks, so many filters being removed, so much weight off our shoulders so that just we can be authentic and we can focus on the purpose. Looking back to why businesses exist, there is a purpose, there is a vision, there is work that needs to be done. And these structures are waiting for people to show up and focus on the work. But because they're so tangled up in these masks and these filters, they cannot even get to the work because there's so much projection and overthinking and so on. So this is gonna clear the air at a mental level. It's gonna clear the flow at the heart level, and it's gonna allow for more of our souls to be channeled. So I'm excited to see that transition and transformation happen. And thank you for leading the way by raising awareness around a title as beautiful and inspiring as Chief Embodiment Officer. Hopefully, we're gonna see more workplaces bring individuals to test this new role and see what the effect is on people and see what the adoption is of different modalities. It doesn't have to be just pure spirituality, it could also be mindfulness. It's about the
Hmm.
presence. But yeah, absolutely excited about it. And on that note of self knowing and awareness, we're moving to the next part of the podcast where we talk about your life path and who you are and how you are moving in alignment with your purpose.
Hmm.
So, in your case, we've got creativity in the first name, path 5, using your imagination to reimagine Earth and offer new solutions. And Chief Embodiment Officer kind of feels like you're already doing it.
Yeah.
Then we've got for the middle name, which is how you're meant to help others because you've already mastered that within the first part of your life partnerships, co creating with others and helping them connect with more of their soul tribe, which tells me that in the first part of your life, you might have spent a lot of time around many people, kind of like a social butterfly, so that you can understand humans. And now you can help them do the same, become more of that social butterfly in their life. And then last name connects us to 8, the path of transformation. So you being that energy of transformation wherever you go, letting your energy purify and transform spaces as you unfold your truest self. This is a very powerful energy, and people that have transformation anywhere in their natal birth chart or life path, they naturally disrupt the status quo with their presence. They don't even have to speak. Their presence energetically shifts the status quo. And you have that as kind of your style, your communication style. So the more you communicate, actually, the more that transformation is felt and the
Mm.
more it shifts things for the better with an overall life path to the path of resources. So this can be connected also to that inner duality, masculine and feminine self, logic and intuition. So bringing that duality of life together for a more balanced perspective, for a more balanced life. So maybe what you create, what you say, what you bring always reminds people of that balance and it restores balance in the status quo after the initial disruption. Is that in alignment so
Yeah.
far?
Yeah, very cool. I think it's very interesting to see from an outside perspective, zoomed out, explaining so much of I think my purpose here.
Absolutely. Yeah. And one of the things about the feminine blueprint, feminine authenticity blueprint is that if you change your last name when you get married, you're also shifting your overall life path. Or there's a possibility if you change the number. So
Hmm.
maybe that says something about the multi-dimensional nature of women that we get to complete multiple assignments during our lifetime. It can also, if men decide to change their last name as well, or if you decide to go under a nickname, that can also change your overall life path. So we see that in celebrities when they shorten their last name or they change their overall name, they're embodying different energy. So that's exciting to see that we can be in charge of our destiny just a little bit. Now, who's to say if that wasn't a guided decision from our higher self? I don't know, but we can definitely become aware of certain things about who we are and then change our decisions based on that increased awareness. And with the astrology, there's even more information around the energetic profile, a lot of elements. In your case, we have a lot of fire. I think this is the most fiery natal birth chart I've ever seen. And
Oh.
so it's exciting to unpack it. Sun sign and Sagittarius in the 12th house. This is spirituality, it's humanity, it's global mission. So, here to lead as part of that global mission, to join collectives that are also aligned with global missions and to care about humanity in a way that most people are probably not concerned. But that's
Mm.
okay because this is in alignment with who you are. And also with the 12th house, you also have this shortcut to understanding these spiritual big concepts that might seem woo woo to the average person. Again, because their instructions are rooted in a different house, different focus area. So, a natural spiritualist based on your sun sign. With the moon sign in Leo in the 8th house, we see the fiery presence is consistent, but the focus area here in the 8th house shows me that the focus for the first part of your life has been on transforming yourself. So the
Mm,
energy has been about researching how humans behave, how they change, how they grow based on your own transformations, especially with the South Node that kind of pairs up with the moon sign, Aquarius in the eighth house transformation. This has been almost your assignment for the first part of your life to understand at a conscious level what transformation means for the humans, you being one of the humans that is transforming all the time,
right.
adopting these ideas, doing research, writing things down, testing them out, experimenting, sharing these ideas, going back to the drawing board, and so on. Now that you have that awareness, you can pair it up with your higher self and channel these ideas in the more practical way to guide people how to begin their own transformation. With North Node, Leo in the second house, resources, full alignment with your overall life path. So there's definitely something that you're here to create. I think the word resources is crucial, but it doesn't
Mm,
have to be limited to just resources that are grounded that you can buy. It could also be resources that allow us to have these conversations that change our perspectives, that discourse that continues on and on and on. And if you think about ancient Greece and how they communicated these big philosophical ideas, they had forums where they allowed their voices to be heard, where they allowed themselves to channel these ideas, and we're still talking about them. This is how big their impact was. So, a
wow.
resource doesn't have to be just something physically created if it's as powerful. Rising sign, it's a fire sign, Sagittarius, allowing your higher self to lead. The Sagittarius is in the ninth house. This is higher meaning, higher education. This is higher purpose. Allowing yourself to keep the frequency high and also to keep the focus there all the times, not getting distracted with the surface level, not getting distracted with the small talk, allowing yourself to be who you are and maybe triggering people to find a niche for themselves, to find what they're passionate about. This is, I think, your rising side coming to the surface to trigger some people because you're not backing away from your own identity. Not
Mhm.
anymore.
No.
And with the Venus sign, another fire sign, Sagittarius in the first house, I think you're meant to lead the way when it comes to every single relationship because there is a thirst for that knowledge that's inside of you, but there is also this access to higher knowledge that is inside of you. So you get to share that. And maybe this is bringing more alignment with other leaders, people that are courageous enough to share their soul, their insights, their wisdom, their skills, their gifts. We have all kinds of gifts. Some of them are more celebrated and more accepted, others, not so much. But you can recognize when you meet a leader, and that allows you to form that bond with them.
Mhm.
Which takes us to the overall first path, which is life path five, which is kind of your soul purpose in learning path. You're here to be a frequency uplifter,
Huh.
to offer guidance and resources on people's healing journey by inviting them on a playful adventure to increased soul embodiment. You have the ability to raise them up to meet their souls, their higher self, in a way that allows them to then ground that essence inside of their bodies. There is nothing here connected to earth, which is why I'm not speaking about the body as much. I'm talking more about the embodiment of the soul because you have that ability to meet your own soul and then guide people back to their own embodiment of their own soul. The middle path, seven, which is the partnerships, you're here to be a transformation guide, to use your understanding of the human nature to connect people and invite them to co create powerful transformation, whether that's a confirmation one to one. Maybe it's a conversation that you have with someone that allows them to transform. Maybe it's these collective experiences where people can transform
Mm.
together. But transformation is part of your blueprint, and so are partnerships. So these are two keywords that you're already comfortable at the level of your consciousness, which is a powerful, I suppose, instruction in your blueprint because many people struggle with being seen or being around many people, that social element. So you have that strength, that superpower. And finally, 8, which is kind of how you're meant to showcase your gifts and talents, the transformational expert in society. You're kind of like the leader's whisperer. Your presence has the power to touch people's spirit and awaken their dormant leader. You
Mm.
simply lead the way and you meet them halfway. You recognize the leaders even before they see themselves as leaders, and you're able to bring that higher leader to the surface so that they can lead from that expanded, embodied self. How does that uh, translate in your mind?
Yeah, it's really interesting. The thing that really came through for me when you said so much of this was about spirit and not about the body, there's not a lot of earth. And I think that was why I was meant to be in the body in my life here, so that I can transmute and transform all of this information grounded within my vessel in this body. So this really does resonate. I think transformation guide. Um, it's it feels really big, but it also feels really right. And I would say that, like, all of these pieces, it's such a beautiful way of really a validation of the core version of who I am and what I'm here to do. And it really is to serve and support and guide through what I go through and what I continue to go through. I always say, grow through what you go through. And that's really, I think, what I'm leading in the way I support myself and others.
And while there isn't earth that connects to the body a little bit more, we do have a lot of fire that can be translated as purpose, but also as presence. So your
Mm,
mere presence is igniting that spark in people, which is very much in alignment with the embodiment. We want people to be more present. And how do you invite someone to be more present? You just hold space for them. You are present with your own higher self or soul, and they can recognize there's something different in the energy around them, and that takes their attention away from the noise,
mm,
the trauma, the taxes, the problems, and they're being brought to the present moment, and they can honor mother earth, nature. They can honor each other and see themselves as not separated individuals but part of the one, which is where I think fire leaders and people with a lot of fire in their natal birth chart, they have that expanded presence that carries more of their spirit. And sometimes it's very challenging to be around people with fire energy because it's so different. It's an energy that challenges you. It's an energy that illuminates things. It's an energy that activates things just
yes.
by being around them. So it will be interesting to maybe start capturing what it means to be a fire sign on earth today as part of your journey, because I think your experience of earth might be completely different than somebody who's a an earth sign or an air sign, because we get a lot of them. Earth signs, you're going to see them like the person that goes every day to the gym, that is kind of like an earth sign, the consistency, the lifestyle.
Mm,
The person that is always conversating and delivering speeches, that's the embodiment of the air sign. But when it comes to the water signs and the fire signs, water sign is the community leader. The water sign is bubbly, but there's something different about them. They allow for that emotional flow, and the fire sign is very similar like that. They
mm.
go everywhere, but wherever they go, there's almost like, oh, I can feel that person was here. Like that energy, it just stays there for a long time.
Well, that warmth, you feel the warmth, right, of that fire.
Oh, sometimes fire burns, but
Yeah,
yes,
that too.
there is warmth as well. As I like to finish every Born to Do It episode, one is not born into their purpose, one steps into their purpose. We get to align when we feel ready and when we want to align. Sometimes we don't feel ready for that purpose and we choose to dedicate our life to something else. That doesn't mean that our life is not of purpose, it's just not aligned with the purpose that allows
Mm,
us to channel the most of our potential during our lifetime. And as You're channeling more of your fire on Earth this year. What's next for Erica? How can people
Ooh.
connect with you and work with you and feel some of that fire?
Wow, there's so many things that are kindling over here, if we'll use the fire analogy. So I am on Instagram, Groove with Erica. You can find me there. I'm also on LinkedIn, so you can check me out on both of those platforms. I have a proprietary reset framework, which really helps people allow space from the autopilot. So if you check out my website, groovewitherica.com, you'll be able to get a free reset, which is a way for you to allow yourselves to come back home to your body. And check me out. I would love to connect to any of the listeners, anyone who's interested in embodiment and somatics or just looking for a conscious conversation.
What's your intention for the rest of 2025? If you could make one wish
Hmm.
that's kind of a collective wish, but also kind of brings you closer to your purpose, what would that intention be?
Yeah, I think one of the words that you said about transformation, I think for me, it's really creating more community spaces where there is an ability for groups of people to witness each other in transformation. So using movement, music, all these modalities that I've been playing around with in my own little universe, creating experiences for people to really come back home to themselves using movement as the medicine. That's what's coming up and coming through. So stay tuned for some really good, new, exciting, big updates on that front.
Witnessing each other's transformation and supporting each other through that transformation. Beautiful. I wish I had someone like that when I was transforming. So I'm sure that what you're creating is going to help so many people that are just beginning that transformation because it can be a lonely process, but it can also be quite discouraging at times. And we just need someone to say, yeah, I believe in you. You got this. Come on.
Yeah,
Maybe
and
you just need someone to touch you with the fire and be like, yeah, there you go.
just
That's your spark.
a little boop of fire. And just one other element, as you were saying that, which I think is also important, is the integration. I'm really passionate around creating spaces where we have these conversations, we have these spaces where we can really share and open up authentically. So weaving in authentic integration experiences so that you aren't healing isolated and alone, but find other like-minded people that are open, curious, kind, and available to be present to support you along your path.
I love this. This is the intention. More
Mhm.
connectedness throughout the
Yes.
next few months as we're preparing for the next year, which is year 10. So it's going to be a year of success. This is year 9. So this is the year of higher meaning, higher purpose, and higher healing
Mm.
to prepare us for the year of success, visibility, and recognition next year. Thank you for joining me on Born to Do It, Erica. Thank you for your work. And I'm excited to see what else you bring to life as you're illuminating the way with your fiery spirit.
Thank you, Stella. Thank you, everyone who's listening. You all matter, and I see you and I support each and every one of you. And I'm so appreciative that I was being able to be here today. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for watching or listening. If you have any questions, just leave a comment and one of us is going to be back to you with our energies, earth or fire.